For 4 years, Nathan Cole believed one truth that turned his own success into a weapon. Every month, he wired money home from Singapore, mortgage payments, medical bills, enough to give his 68-year-old father the comfortable retirement he had earned. But when Nathan flew back to Virginia to surprise him, his cab didn't pull up to that ranch. It stopped at a freezing warehouse where his father was working a midnight security shift, hands swollen from the cold, 2 sweaters under a uniform that was never supposed to be his. Nathan Cole left Virginia 4 years ago with one goal: to make enough money in Singapore so his father could retire in peace. He built a logistics empire from scratch, working 18-hour days. Every month he wired $5,000 home, enough for the mortgage, the medical bills, and the comfort his father deserved. His wife Claire sent smiling video calls from the ranch, so Nathan believed everything was fine. He flew home unannounced, proud of what he'd accomplished. But the cab stopped at a grim warehouse, not the home he'd paid for. Nathan stepped out of the cab into air so cold it bit through his jacket. The warehouse district stretched gray and silent around him, nothing but locked gates and floodlights buzzing against the dark. This was not the address he had memorized. The ranch was supposed to be 30 miles west, a quiet property with a wraparound porch, a red barn, and a mailbox his father had painted by hand. He had seen it 100 times in Claire's video calls. The kitchen window with the hummingbird feeder, the living room with his father's recliner facing the fireplace. His wife had walked through every room, holding her phone up, saying, "Look, Nate, your dad just fell asleep in his chair again. Everything's perfect." Everything was not perfect. The cab driver had confirmed the address twice. Nathan tipped him and stood alone in front of a low concrete building with a small dirty window near the entrance. Through the glass, he saw a metal desk, a time clock yellowed with age, and a security monitor split into 4 grainy feeds. And behind the desk, hunched forward with 2 sweaters layered beneath a faded uniform jacket, was Walter Cole, Nathan's father. He was thinner than Nathan had ever seen him, his shoulders drawn inward, his cheekbones sharp enough to cut shadow. His hands rested on a logbook, the knuckles swollen and red from the unheated office. A space heater glowed orange near his feet, too small to matter. This was the man who had worked 40 years in a tire plant, who had put Nathan through business school with overtime shifts, who had once said, "Son, you go chase that dream. I'll be right here when you get back." The dream was supposed to have given him a soft landing. Instead, at 68 years old, Walter Cole was guarding a warehouse at midnight for wages that barely covered groceries. Nathan pushed the door open. A small bell rang. Walter looked up slowly, his tired eyes adjusting to the visitor. Then recognition hit. His mouth opened, but no sound came out at first. "Nathan?" His voice was rough, almost a croak, like he hadn't spoken to anyone in hours. "Dad?" Nathan crossed the small room and wrapped his arms around his father. He expected the familiar sturdy frame, the barrel chest, the strength that once lifted engine blocks and built backyard sheds. Instead, he felt bones. He felt the tremor of a man holding himself together. Walter pulled back and forced a smile, the same kind of smile he used to give when money was tight and he didn't want the kids to worry. "What are you doing here? You didn't tell me you were coming." Nathan stared at the uniform, the desk, the logbook. "Dad, what is this? Why are you working here?" "Where's the ranch?" Walter's smile flickered and died. He looked down at his swollen hands as if the answer was written there. "The ranch is gone, son. Been gone almost 2 years now." The words landed like a physical blow. Nathan shook his head. "Gone? How? I've been sending money every single month. The mortgage, the insurance, extra for whatever you needed." Claire said everything was fine. At the mention of her name, Walter's face tightened, not with anger, but with a kind of deep, exhausted confusion. "Claire told us the money stopped. She said your business hit trouble, that you were embarrassed to come home. She said we shouldn't call because it would only make you feel worse." Nathan felt the floor tilt. "That's a lie. Dad, I never stopped sending a single dollar. I have the bank records." Walter's hands trembled harder. He reached into his jacket and pulled out a folded piece of paper, worn at the creases from being read too many times. It was a foreclosure notice dated 18 months ago, with the bank's seal at the top. Below it was another document, an eviction letter addressed to Walter Cole, stating the property had been purchased by a new owner at auction. A new owner whose name was printed clearly at the bottom, Claire Cole. Nathan stared at his wife's name until the letters blurred. She had not just stopped the payments. She had bought the ranch out from under his father, erased him from the deed, and left him with no home, no savings, and no choice but to take a night guard job that barely kept him alive. While Nathan was sleeping in a high-rise in Singapore, his wife was staging video calls in a house she had already stolen, smiling into the camera, telling him his father was comfortable. And his father, too ashamed to ruin his son's marriage, had said nothing. That was the moment the dream shattered completely. Nathan stood in that freezing warehouse office with the eviction letter in his hand, and for the first time in his life, he understood that the woman he had married was not a partner. She was a predator. And she had buried his father in silence, while Nathan was 11,000 miles away. Nathan lowered the eviction letter and looked at his father, really looked at him. The proud man who had taught him to ride a bike, who had worked double shifts without complaint, was now reduced to a cold warehouse, a logbook, and a space heater that barely kept the frost away. Walter Cole had been erased from his own life. And the woman who did it was the same woman Nathan had kissed goodbye at the airport 4 years ago, believing she would protect everything he left behind. "Dad, I need you to tell me everything," Nathan said, pulling up a metal folding chair. "From the beginning. When did she first contact you about the money?" Walter rubbed his swollen knuckles. "It started about 6 months after you left. She came by the ranch, all smiles, with a casserole. Said she wanted to help manage the finances since I was getting older. She told me you had set up a joint account for the mortgage and bills, and that from now on, everything would go through her. It sounded reasonable. She was your wife, Nathan. I trusted her." Nathan's stomach churned. He had never authorized a joint account. He had set up direct transfers from his Singapore bank to a dedicated mortgage account at a Virginia credit union, an account that was supposed to be in his father's name, with Claire as a secondary signer only for emergencies. The first revelation came when Nathan pulled up his banking app on his phone. He scrolled through 4 years of wire transfers, each one $5,000, every month without fail. The receiving account number was listed. He read it aloud. Walter shook his head. "That's not my account. Mine has a different number." Nathan's blood ran cold. Claire had switched the destination account within the first year, likely forging documents to redirect the wires into an account she controlled. While Nathan was building his company, she had built a pipeline directly into his earnings, but she hadn't just stolen the incoming money. Walter continued, his voice weaker now. "After the first year, she told me the bank was threatening foreclosure because the mortgage wasn't being paid. I didn't understand. I thought you were sending funds. She said your business was struggling, that you were borrowing from the house to stay afloat, and that you were too ashamed to tell me. She showed me papers with your signature, asking for more time." Nathan's jaw tightened. He had never signed any such papers. Claire had forged his signature, just as she had forged the financial reality his father lived in for 3.5 years. Then came the second devastating blow. Walter explained that Claire had offered a solution. She would buy the ranch herself to save it from the bank, using her own money, which she claimed was an inheritance. She told Walter he could stay as long as he wanted, but the deed would need to be transferred to her name temporarily to satisfy the lenders. Walter, desperate and believing his son was failing, signed the quitclaim deed. He signed away his home to the woman who had manufactured the crisis. Nathan leaned forward, anger and grief colliding in his chest. And after she owned it, Walter looked at the floor. She was kind for a while, then things changed. She said the house needed expensive repairs, that she couldn't afford both the upkeep and my expenses. She suggested I move out temporarily. I didn't want to be a burden, so I found this job and a small room nearby. I thought it was temporary. Then one day, I drove by the ranch, and there was a for sale sign in the yard. I called Claire, and she said the market was hot, she had to sell, but she would help me find a new place. That was the last time she took my call. Nathan now understood the full architecture of the betrayal. Claire had isolated his father from the truth, used forged documents to redirect funds, coerced him into signing over the deed under false pretenses, and then evicted him from the property so she could sell it for a massive profit, all while maintaining the illusion of a happy home through staged video calls. She had weaponized Nathan's love and his father's trust. But there was one more layer. Nathan visited the county recorder's office the next morning and pulled the full property history. The ranch had sold 9 months ago to a development company for $640,000. The deed transfer showed Claire as the sole seller, with no mention of Walter's prior ownership. Worse, Nathan discovered a home equity line of credit taken out against the property 2 years earlier, $120,000 drawn in Claire's name, using the forged deed and false financial statements. She hadn't just stolen the house, she had bled its equity dry before discarding it. Nathan stood in the fluorescent-lit county office, paper in hand. And for the first time since the warehouse, he felt something colder than shock. He felt the clarity of a man who knew exactly what had to be done. Claire hadn't just buried his father in silent poverty, she had built herself a small fortune on the grave of his family's trust. And now, Nathan had the bank records, the forged signatures, the quitclaim deed, and the testimony of a broken old man who had done nothing wrong except believe his daughter-in-law was family. He drove back to the warehouse that evening with a plan forming. But when he arrived, the office was empty. Walter's shift hadn't started yet. Nathan found him in the small rented room nearby, a single bulb hanging from the ceiling, a hot plate on a crate, and a cot with a blanket too thin for the Virginia winter. On the wall, Walter had pinned one photograph, Nathan's graduation day 20 years ago, the two of them smiling in front of the old house. It was the only decoration in the room. Nathan realized his father had been carrying that photo through every eviction, every betrayal, every cold night, a reminder that somewhere, someone still loved him. That image, that photograph, became the pivot. Nathan had been operating as a businessman seeking justice. Now, he was a son who had seen the full cost of his absence. The case was no longer about money or property. It was about dignity. And the clock was ticking. Claire didn't know he was back yet. She believed her lies were still intact. But Nathan was about to dismantle every one of them, starting with the woman who had smiled into a camera while his father shivered in the dark. Nathan didn't sleep that night. He sat in his father's rented room, the single bulb flickering above, and began the systematic work that had made him a logistics tycoon, tracking the flow. Not of cargo this time, but of cash. He opened his laptop, logged into his Singapore banking platform, and exported every wire transfer he had made since the day he landed in Asia. 4 years. 48 transfers. $240,000, all destined for an account he had believed was protecting his father. But the account number wasn't Walter's. It was registered to Claire at a bank branch 3 towns over, under an account she had opened 6 months before Nathan left Virginia. She hadn't just intercepted the money. She had prepared the trap before he even boarded the plane. The next morning, Nathan drove to that bank and presented his records. The branch manager, a woman named Patricia, sat behind a glass partition and reviewed the documents with growing unease. She couldn't disclose account details without legal authority, but she could confirm one thing: the account was sole owner Claire Cole, and it had never been a joint mortgage account. Nathan's wires had been flowing directly into her personal checking account, and from there she had been paying the ranch mortgage at first, headlines that made the scheme look legitimate, before quietly draining the equity. Patricia's eyes lowered. "Mr. Cole, I shouldn't say this, but I remember your father. He came here once, confused, trying to understand why the bank was sending him foreclosure notices. I told him the mortgage had been transferred to a private lender. That lender, was your wife, a private lender. Claire had not stopped at stealing the house. She had turned herself into the bank, charging interest on a debt she had manufactured. Nathan drove to the county courthouse and pulled every document attached to the ranch's title. There was the quitclaim deed Walter had signed, notarized by a local mobile notary named Linda Breck. Linda's signature was on half a dozen other transfers involving Claire, a small strip mall, 2 rental properties, an office condo. Claire was a serial acquirer, using the same playbook on other elderly owners. But the worst document was a home equity line of credit signed 2 years ago, just months before the eviction. It authorized a draw of $120,000, with a loan agreement bearing Walter Cole's signature. Nathan had learned his father's handwriting like his own. The slant was wrong, the pressure too even. It was a copy-paste job likely traced from the original quitclaim. A forgery layered on a fraud. Nathan tracked down Linda Breck, the mobile notary, at her home in a suburb of Richmond. When she saw the documents, her face collapsed. She admitted she had been paid double her usual fee to notarize the quitclaim without Walter being present. She said he was too sick to leave the house, Linda whispered. She had a man with her who looked like an older gentleman, said he was Mr. Cole. I didn't check his ID closely. She paid me in cash. I knew it was wrong, but I needed the money. Nathan recorded her statement on his phone, the guilt in her voice cutting like static. She wasn't the villain, she was another victim of Claire's manipulation. A small piece in a much larger machine. Now Nathan had eyewitness testimony, forged documents, bank evidence, and the statement of a notary who had been bribed. But there was one more place he hadn't looked, the sale of the ranch itself. He went back to the county records and researched the buyer, Blue Ridge Development, LLC. The company's registered agent was a law firm in Charlottesville, but the managing member, buried in incorporation filings, was listed as C. Cole, Claire. She had sold the ranch to a company she controlled, likely inflating the sale price to launder the home equity funds and generate a clean paper trail. She hadn't just taken the house, she had used it as a money multiplier, squeezing every possible dollar of value out of a property she had obtained for free, bought with Walter's signature and Nathan's love. Nathan called his attorney in Singapore and had them recommend a Virginia litigator with experience in elder financial abuse and real estate fraud. By evening, he was sitting across from Elaine Ross, a former prosecutor who specialized in exactly this kind of crime. She reviewed the documents with the cold precision of a woman who had seen every shade of familial betrayal. This is textbook, she said. Coercion, misrepresentation, forgery, and fraudulent conveyance. The equity line is criminal under state law. So is the notary solicitation. You have enough to go to the district attorney right now. Nathan asked what she needed to move forward. One more thing, a direct admission. She's good at covering her tracks. If you can get her to admit, in writing or on a recording, that she knew Walter was the true owner and she misled him, we can make this airtight. So Nathan began to build the final piece. He knew Claire's vanity was her weakness. She believed she was smarter than everyone, untouchable. If he staged his return as a loving husband, she would perform the same role she had played for 4 years. She would smile, lie, and eventually, she would slip. He spent the next day preparing. He downloaded a recording app on his phone, placed a discreet voice recorder in his jacket, and booked a suite at a hotel under a fake name so Claire wouldn't see any unusual charges. Then he called her. The phone rang twice. Nate? Her voice was warm, surprised, the same voice from every video call. I'm back, he said, keeping his tone light. Surprise trip. Wanted to see you and Dad. Thought I'd take you both to dinner. There was a fractional pause, the smallest hesitation, as if her brain was computing the risk. Then, the charm kicked in. Oh my God, that's amazing. When? Where are you? Nathan gave her the hotel address and said he'd pick her up at 7. She agreed instantly, bubbly and sweet, asking about his flight, his business, his plans. He played along, even laughed, all while staring at the eviction letter folded on the desk beside him. That evening, he drove to the address she had given him years ago as their shared home, the same address from the video calls. It was a luxury condominium in the city center, 3 bedrooms, floor-to-ceiling windows, a view of the river. She had bought it 18 months ago, around the same time she evicted Walter. He parked and waited. At exactly 7, the lobby door opened and Claire stepped out in a black dress. Her hair perfect, her smile radiant. She looked like a woman without a care. She hugged him, and he felt her warmth, smelled her perfume. The same perfume she wore on their wedding day. For one surreal second, his mind rebelled against the evidence. This was his wife, the woman he had trusted with everything. But then he remembered the single bulb in his father's room, the swollen hands, the photograph pinned to the wall. He opened the car door for her. "I made dinner reservations," he said. "But first, I want you to see something." He handed her a sealed envelope containing only one document, the quitclaim deed with Walter's forged signature. She took it, still smiling. "What's this?" she asked. "Just open it." She tore the seal and unfolded the deed. Her smile didn't vanish, it melted, replaced by a cold, calculating stillness Nathan had never seen before. In that silence, he understood that the woman he thought he knew was a mask, and behind it was something entirely different. Claire stared at the quitclaim deed for a long moment, the silence in the car thickening like winter fog. Then she did something Nathan hadn't expected. She laughed. It was a short, brittle sound, more reflex than humor. "Where did you get this?" she asked, her voice still sweet but now carefully controlled. "Your father signed that willingly. He wanted to protect the property." Nathan didn't blink. "My father signed a quitclaim deed believing he was saving the house from foreclosure. A foreclosure you manufactured. The notary has already given a sworn statement. She was paid to lie. I have her on recording, Claire." The sweet veneer cracked. Her fingers tightened on the paper. "That's ridiculous. She's lying." Nathan pulled out his phone and played the audio. Linda Breck's voice filled the car. "She paid me double. I didn't check his ID. It wasn't Mr. Cole." Claire's expression shifted from defiance to cold calculation. "You're going to believe some desperate notary over your wife?" Nathan didn't raise his voice. He simply reached into the folder on the back seat and handed her the bank records, the home equity paperwork, and the incorporation documents for Blue Ridge Development, LLC. Her name was highlighted on every page. "You emptied the equity, sold the ranch to yourself, and pocketed the proceeds. You didn't just steal from my father, you turned him into a revenue stream." For the first time since she entered the car, Claire was silent. Her mask had dropped entirely, revealing something empty and predatory. "What do you want, Nathan?" she asked, her tone now flat businesslike. "Money? Half the assets?" Nathan looked at her and saw a stranger. "I want you to answer one question. Did you ever love me? Or was I just the logistics pipeline?" She tilted her head, considering the question like a chess move. "You were useful," she said finally. "Hardworking, trusting, far away. The perfect husband for someone who needed a steady income and no questions." She smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "You really thought I was visiting your father out of kindness?" He was a loose end. "I gave him a job reference, by the way. The warehouse. I called in a favor." Nathan's hands remained steady on the wheel, but inside something hardened into resolve. He reached into his jacket pocket and pressed the stop button on the discreet voice recorder he had been running since the hotel. "Thank you for the admission," he said. "You just confessed to elder fraud, forgery, and financial exploitation. On tape." Claire's smile vanished. She lunged for his jacket, but Nathan was already out of the car, phone in hand. "The district attorney has copies of everything. My attorney filed an emergency motion this morning to freeze all your accounts and place a lien on the condo." He held up his phone, showing a confirmation email from Elaine Ross. "Your assets are locked as of 1 hour ago. Blue Ridge Development is being investigated for fraudulent conveyance, and the FBI's Elder Fraud Task Force has been notified." Claire sat frozen in the passenger seat, her perfect composure finally shattered. The woman who had manipulated banks, notaries, and a dying old man had finally encountered something she couldn't charm, threaten, or forge her way out of: the truth. with receipts. Nathan didn't scream or gloat. He simply called a cab for her and watched as she was driven away, her face pale and furious behind the taxi window. The next months moved with the precision of a well-run logistics chain. Nathan filed a civil suit for restitution, and the criminal case gained traction as other victims came forward. Linda Breck's testimony connected Claire to 3 other fraudulent quitclaim deeds targeting elderly homeowners in the Richmond area. The FBI uncovered a pattern. Claire would identify vulnerable seniors, often through church directories, gain their trust, and then orchestrate fake foreclosures to strip their property. Walter's case became the centerpiece of a multi-count indictment. In court, Claire's defense crumbled under the weight of the evidence. She was convicted on 7 felony counts, including elder abuse, forgery, and grand larceny, and sentenced to 12 years in federal prison. But the most surprising detail emerged during the asset recovery process, when investigators opened the safe deposit box Claire had kept at a second bank. They didn't just find cash and deeds. They found a small velvet pouch containing Helen Cole's wedding ring, the one item Walter had believed was lost in the chaos of eviction. Claire had taken it not for its value, which was modest, but as a trophy. She had kept it alongside the deeds of every home she had stolen, a private museum of her own predation. Nathan returned the ring to his father on a quiet Sunday morning, 3 months after the trial. Walter was sitting in the living room of a new apartment, a modest 2-bedroom with wide windows and a small garden that Nathan had helped plant. His hands were still swollen, but his eyes were clearer now, lighter. He held the ring in his palm and wept without shame. "Your mother wore this for 52 years, he whispered. "I thought I'd never see it again." He slid it onto his pinky, the only finger it still fit, and looked at Nathan. "You didn't just save me, son. You brought her back." The ranch was never recovered. Blue Ridge Development had already sold the land to a commercial builder, but Nathan used the restitution funds to purchase a new property, a smaller farm on the outskirts of town with a red barn and a wraparound porch. The mailbox was painted by hand, blue this time, in honor of his mother's favorite color. Walter retired from the warehouse the day after the trial and moved in the following spring. He planted roses along the front fence and rebuilt the garden that Claire had left for dead. Nathan returned to Singapore to wind down his company, then relocated permanently to Virginia. He opened a small logistics consulting firm, but his real mission became advocacy. He partnered with the FBI's Elder Fraud Task Force to create a free resource guide for families with aging parents overseas, helping them spot the warning signs of financial exploitation before it was too late. Every time he gave a talk, he held up a photo of his father in that cold warehouse, 2 sweaters under his uniform, and said, "Never assume money is enough. Call, visit, show up." Because predators don't break down doors. They smile, they bake casseroles, and they call themselves family. The lesson was painfully simple. Love isn't a wire transfer. Protection isn't a monthly payment. True love shows up in person, in truth, and in the courage to shatter the illusions that keep evil hidden. Nathan had crossed an ocean to find his father, but the real journey had been the few feet across that freezing warehouse office, the distance between believing everything was fine and discovering that the people you trust most can be lying. He had lost a wife, a fortune, and 4 years of blind faith. But he had found his father, restored his dignity, and learned that sometimes the hardest person to save is the one you left behind, believing they were already safe. Here is the uncomfortable truth that story forces us to face. Betrayal rarely arrives with a warning label. It doesn't kick down the door in the middle of the night. It walks in with a casserole, a warm smile, and a set of keys it never had the right to hold. Claire didn't look like a predator. She looked like a devoted daughter-in-law. She sent video updates, remembered birthdays, and spoke with just enough affection to make a distant husband believe that everything back home was safe. And that was exactly how she won. Not by being invisible, but by being so visible that no one thought to look closer. Nathan's mistake wasn't loving his father. It was outsourcing that love, assuming that money and a marriage certificate would somehow guard against the oldest poison in human history, greed disguised as devotion. He learned the hardest way possible that trust isn't a one-time deposit. It's a daily audit. And when you're 11,000 miles away, you're not protecting anyone. You're just hoping someone else is. So the question isn't really about Claire. People like her exist in every town, in every family tree, waiting for a moment of inattention. The real question is for the rest of us. How many of us have parents, grandparents, or aging relatives we haven't called in weeks? How many of us assume that because a sibling or a spouse is handling things, everything is fine? How many Walters are sitting in cold rooms right now, too proud or too broken to pick up the phone, while someone they trust is quietly emptying their future? Nathan rebuilt his father's life brick by brick, but that restoration required a lie detector, a hidden recorder, a notary's confession, and the full force of federal law enforcement. Most families will never get that far. Most victims die in silence, their stolen years buried under paperwork that no one ever questions. If this story did its job, it should leave you unsettled. Not hopeless, but vigilant. Look at the people who manage the finances of those you love. Ask the uncomfortable questions. Demand transparency. Because the most dangerous thief isn't the one you don't know, it's the one you've already welcomed into your home. Would you have suspected Claire as Nathan did, or would you have believed the video calls too? Tell us in the comments. And if you think aging parents deserve more than hope and a wire transfer, subscribe to this channel. We tell the stories that remind us what protecting family actually requires.